Hi, and welcome to another edition of AI Impact and Strategy. The Fashion Institute of Technology, or FIT, is a SUNY, a state university of New York University, based in Manhattan. It's a fabulous place where thousands of students are working on one square city block on all aspects of design. And I was there as innovation coordinator a few years ago and had the opportunity to work with many of the university departments. One of them that I've kept in touch with is the interior design department. And as AI began to develop, I reached out to my friends in the faculty at interior design and asked them how they were coping with AI because its impact on interior design is already so significant. So they invited me to give a presentation about the future of AI and interior design. And that's what I did last week over Zoom. So this video captures the highlights of what I covered with the FIT interior design faculty and students. In this video, I used some of the images from a prior video, my interview with Devani Ashar about the future of architecture. Devani is doing fabulous work at the leading edge of AI and design. And I wanted to share some of the images that she had shared with me previously. So if you watch that video, you'll see a few images that you've already seen before. The presentation starts off with a general introduction to AI and then talks about the acceleration of change and the perfect digital storm, and then moves on to discuss the future of AI and ends with the discussion about the future of AI as it pertains to interior design. The presentation starts off with a very quick demo of Google Gemini. I asked Google Gemini what it thought about the future of interior design and how AI would impact it. And this is what it said. All right, so I'm going to enter a prompt into Gemini. The thing about AI that you probably have learned already is that the quality of your prompt in a large language model really determines the quality of your output. So I'm going to ask it, what is the future of interior design and what impact will AI have on it? Notice that I made a typo there and Gemini will graciously ignore that. And then I'll be a little more specific. I'll tell it to write no bullet points and write like an architectural digest commentator. All right, let's see what we get. It says just a sec, and here it comes. Boom. But you can see that Gemini thinks that a lot's going to happen. Did not write 5 pages. Give me references, AI and design. Industry reports, academic reports, blah, 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 blah. Gemini thinks that a lot's going to happen, and I agree with Gemini. And with that, I want to talk about AI in the design professions. And the underlying premise or belief or expression of my talk is that it's a revolution. So I'm going to just start off with some images. Tsunami, hockey player. So Wayne Gretzky, the greatest hockey player of all time, according to many people. Quantum computer, which is also very cold. It works at basically 0 degrees Kelvin, so even colder than ice. This is a Honda demonstration or a prototype vehicle, which I hope they bring to market because it's better than anything else that Honda makes by far. And this is a tire factory. We're going to talk about all this stuff as we go along. And then here's a rendering of a nightclub, which was done in Midjourney. So you'll see these images come around during the course of my talk, and I'll explain what they mean and why I'm using them. But first, I want to start off with some examples of how AI is affecting or being used in interior design. So this is the same nightclub. This was designed by a friend of mine named Devani Ashar, that works in Dubai now. She works for a firm called Buro Happold. And I interviewed her for my YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel about AI. And she shared with me a lot of her work, including this. So this is an illustration that she did in Midjourney with some post-production work in Photoshop. This is the cover of a book that she did, also in Midjourney. There's an interior page from the book. The book is written for children, and it's about global warming and climate change. This is Devani herself. In the lower right-hand corner, that's our cartoon that she made of herself. She's a fire engineer at Buro Happold. She's trained as an architect. And so she started to do comics about fire engineering and why it's important. Because she said people kept asking her, what do you do and what does it mean? Again, all of this is done in Midjourney. There she is, and there's a picture of her in the lower right. And she just got promoted. So she just published this on LinkedIn a couple of days ago.
And this is a sketch that she did also in Midjourney, but using the sketch render feature of Midjourney. So instead of doing a cartoon-like illustration, it's doing a rendering. The reason I'm sharing with you all these things is because Devani really educated me about the impact of AI in architecture and interiors work, particularly in her use of Midjourney. The thing that was perhaps most startling about this or most significant about this was she said that, like the illustration, the first one I showed you from the nightclub, it would have taken her 30 to 40 hours to do an illustration like that before Midjourney, and she was able to do that in about 3 hours. So there's a 10x time saving factor. That's proven to be the case across pretty much everybody that's using these tools. So the impact on productivity is incredible, and we're really only at the beginning of what these tools can do. What they'll be able to do in 2 or 3 years is going to be even more significant. And that led Devani to make a comment, which you've heard the likes of before, I'm sure. She said, AI will not replace architects, but architects who use AI will replace architects who do not. And then I found pretty much the same comment from a physician, and he's the head, not just a physician, he's the head of the American Medical Association, so an important physician. He said, AI will not replace doctors, but doctors who use AI will replace doctors who do not. And that leads me to make the same comment about interior design. Interior designers who use AI will replace those who do not. So that's my premise. So that means, if I'm correct in that, AI has to be part of the curriculum, and it's going to change the curriculum in fundamental ways. And that's what I want to explore with you today. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about AI and the technology in a more general sense, and then I'll come back and talk about AI specifically in interior design. So the image that I'm using as a background here is intended to show how AI can take random dots and turn them into a pattern. And that's one of its superpowers, the ability of AI to recognize patterns. And likewise, it has a profound ability to help us solve problems. I'll give you some examples in a few minutes. And to model very, very complex systems, which large buildings are very complex systems, as you know from your work in BIM. As I began to understand this, I began to research, and I discovered that all of these professions are applying AI at a very high level. And I gave a talk recently, and I made the comment as a question to them. I said, it appears to me that if you're a PhD in any field, you have to be using AI right now. And they nodded and they agreed with me. And so this goes back to the comment that I made, which was at sort of the beginning blurb of the talk, which is that AI was expected, and robotics was expected to disrupt the lower levels of the economy, the people who are drivers and working in warehouses and working in fast food restaurants. But currently, the disruption is being experienced by the people who are most educated and who are doing work at the highest levels of their profession, including in all of these. And so what that means to me is that it's profoundly different than our fear. Now, there may be that level of disruption in the lower levels of the economy coming, but right now it's at the highest levels of the economy. So what that means, I think, is that AI is changing how we think. It's literally changing how people who are highly educated and highly trained think about the problems that they want to solve and how they want to solve them. If Devani can take 30 hours of work and compress it into 3 hours and produce a product of equal or better quality, that is literally changing our mindset. It's changing how we think. So it's changing how we work and how we solve problems. It's even changing the problems. We are now able to address problems that we couldn't solve before. So it is changing the economy, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And as I said, it's changing all the professions, and soon potentially it's going to change everything. So for example, last year, the AI won the Nobel Prize. These 3 scientists technically won the Nobel Prize, but the work that they did could not have been done without AI. One of the guys who won the Nobel Prize said it this way. He said, is AI a new tool or a new category of tool? And of course, his point is that it is a new category of tool. It's a kind of tool that humanity has never had access to before. And he then pointed out that science is now proceeding at digital speed, which is because experiments are being done digitally super fast, like hundreds of experiments can be done in a day, whereas a single experiment in the lab might take a month or two. So we have a couple orders of magnitude speeding up of science, and that's just typical across many professions. So now he's saying 99% of the work is done in silicon, i.e. on computers, and then we validate 1% in the lab. Here's an example from MasterCard. He said, we're scanning trillions of data points. So again, this is the pattern recognition. No human can comprehend what trillions of data points mean, but AI systems can. Climate scientists are now using AI to improve their climate models. And again, with the rapid speed of AI's capacity, they can iterate their models much, much faster than they could before AI. Computational fluid dynamics. So every engineering profession is now making use of AI in a very sophisticated way. So it's moving. It's a field that's moving fast, like as fast as this jet. You know all about digital twins because it's part of architecture and interior design practice. But here's a digital twin you may not know about. JetBlue, which is an airline, has digital twins not only of their aircraft, but of their route network. So they can use AI to help them manage disruptions which are caused by weather or equipment malfunctions or badly behaving passengers or crew shortages in order to speed up their capacity to respond to these problems, which in the airline industry are chronic. Like a day does not go by where they don't have to cope with something. I recently interviewed the CEO of a company that does neonatal care. Neonatal means newborn. So they set up a video camera in an incubator using an AI system. This company keeps a camera on each child constantly. And they're able to analyze the noise pattern from children crying, the color of their skin, and their movement. And the graphic here is a movement chart. And using those three sources of data, the AI can determine if a child is entering a period of physical stress. So it's improving the neonatal care, obviously, for the doctors and the nurses and the parents and for the babies themselves. I recently interviewed a guy who works for Michelin, and he observed in the interview that Michelin is saving 50 million euros per year by using AI. So they've implemented AI throughout all of their 100 factories around the world, and their target is $500 million or euros of annual savings through their AI implementations. And what I found particularly interesting about that was that all of the employees in all of the factories are the ones who are actually using the AI. So obviously his team has set up this capability, but it's the employees who are using it. So people who you might think of as relatively uneducated who are working in a tire manufacturing plant are using AI to help their company save 500 million euros per year. So I've tried to find examples across the entire span of the economy. So we've got manufacturing, healthcare, finance, interior design, architecture, science. So what this tells me is sort of at a macro level is that we're digitalizing our entire society. And this is not a new thing. This has been going on since the 1990s. But AI is accelerating it in a very, very significant way. What's behind it is the information revolution and this compounding of digital power. So the growth rate or the improvement rate of basic computer chips is roughly doubling every 18 months. We know that as Moore's law. Our communication technology is improving at a rate of about every 9 months. We double in speed or capacity. We have access to even more storage. So you've heard about all these bazillions of dollars that companies are spending on server farms. That's primarily for storage, but also for compute. So if you put all this together, you get a profoundly exponential process. And AI itself is improving at a rate of around 10x per year. This is historically unprecedented. We've never seen a technological revolution of this magnitude happening this fast. And as a consequence, the cost of computing goes down about 95% every 10 years by all these trends compounding and sustaining over a long period of time. We're approaching this phenomenon of robotics and supercomputing capabilities, and it's not just AI. So we're seeing machine vision, robotics, virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, 5G, 6G, big data, quantum computing, blockchain, drones, blah, 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 blah. All these things are happening at the same time. So AI has sort of become the leading edge of this technological wave. And I think it's happened that way because we have the ability to talk to AI in natural language. And because behind that interface that you saw me typing into Gemini is, a vast storehouse of essentially all the knowledge that humanity has ever recorded and made public through Wikipedia and just by scraping the web. So AI, quote, knows everything. And then you compound it with all these other technologies, you get a tsunami alert. We call this the perfect digital storm. That's why I showed the tsunami. The very first image that I showed you was a tsunami, because that's what's coming. So it's not just AI, it's AI plus all this other stuff, some of which will have massive impact on interior design. Some of it's less so, but combined, it's pretty much inescapable. Naturally, you are very inquiring minds and you want to know how fast is this going to happen. And naturally, I'm going to tell you what I think. So what we're talking about is the acceleration of change, literally. So I'm going to now step away from AI and just talk about the trend of change a little bit more generally. One of the things I do is I do futurism. So I'm a futurist. I write books about the future and I give talks about the future. And what a futurist like me does is we look for patterns. So looking at the patterns, we see a pattern that looks like this. It's called an exponential change curve. This is the pattern of population growth for the last couple hundred years. This is atmospheric CO2 for the last couple hundred years. This is GDP, the economic growth for the last couple hundred years. And this is patent filings, which are related to GDP growth, because what are we doing? We're increasing our knowledge. So, of course, you couldn't help notice that all of these curves are the same. They're exponential curves. The increase of knowledge, blah, blah, blah. Adoption of technology, blah, blah, blah. Computer chip capacity, that's Moore's law. That's what I talked about a little bit ago. Oh, and by the way, the cost is going down. So the capacity is going up and the cost is going down, which means we get more powerful, cheaper computers. So instead of paying $3 billion for your iPhone, you get it for $500 or $1,000. So here's all the trends actually to more accurately drawn with real data behind them. And a couple others that I didn't show you, the growth of YouTube, increase in debt, blah, blah, blah. So the point for me as a futurist is that all these patterns are the same. They're all exponential. So what's up with that? Well, the thing about exponential is that if we divide the time intervals across the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you see that. So each time interval is the same, but the amount of change that we get in each interval increases. To the fifth interval, we get 12 times more change. So if you experience the world as like things are really speeding up, it's because they are really speeding up. Exponential change is the reality, and all those other graphs that I just showed you are my attempt to convince you that that is the case. So that's my evidence, so to speak. And there's plenty more. I could identify about 50 of these curves that are the same. And the thing about this is really important, is that it's never happened in human history before. Nothing like this has ever happened. Humans don't innately understand exponential change curves because they never existed. If you think about millions of years of human history, there was never an exponential trend ever until the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. So we're not genetically programmed to cope with the reality that we have created in our culture, which is what creates a lot of mismatch. And it's becoming highly disrupted. So recently, just for fun, we made a list of disruptions. And I realize you probably can't read this on your screen. It doesn't matter. And we stopped counting at 99 just because, okay, we get the point. There's a lot going on. Some of these are social, some of these are technological, some of them are geopolitical, some of them are political, some of them are social. But the point is that we are living through this period of disruption unlike anything that has ever happened before in the millions of years of human history. Or in the words of a Wall Street banker, it's a blank load, more complicated than it's ever been. And this banker was talking about just the business of being a banker. And then my friend, the IT executive from Michelin, he was observing the increase or the rate at which AI technology is improving. And he said, what was true 6 months ago is no longer true. So we now have to continually question our own assumptions about what's going on in the world. So this is not business as usual. This is a big shift. And actually, when I was at FIT, I wrote a book called The Big Shift because I wanted to understand it first and then explain it. So all this then cascades throughout the economy. So here's a comment from the CEO of Honda. That's why I showed you the Honda car in the beginning. He said, the auto industry is in a once in a century transformation. And that's not necessarily specific to AI, but it's a combination of all these factors. So the answer to the question of how fast is very fast. Sorry, it's a not very specific answer. So now let's go back to AI. As I mentioned earlier, if you have a PhD now, you have to use AI. And they all are. And now we get to the Wayne Gretzky image. So as I mentioned, we're starting to consult. And as I said, we have a team in Thailand working right now. And what we're trying to help the Thai people understand and the Thai government understand is that this future impact isn't the AI that we have today. We have to target where we're going, where this technology is headed, not where we are right now. And that's why I'm using the metaphor or the example of Wayne Gretzky, because you may or may not know that Wayne Gretzky is considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest, hockey player of all time. And someone once asked him why he was so good or why he was great. And what he said is the basis of this image that I'm using. He said, I learned to skate not to where the puck was, but to where the puck was going. And when we think about AI, we have to learn not to go to where AI is now, which is that Gemini example that I showed you at the very beginning, but where it's going to be in 2 or 3 or 5 years, because it's continuing to evolve at an incredibly rapid rate. So I want to share with you our forecast of where it's going. And we may or may not be right, but I hope at least it's going to be provocative. So today, what do we have? Today we have ChatGPT, like I just showed you with Google Gemini, and we have Midjourney, which draws nice images for me really fast. And of course, there are many other competitors that do the same types of things and other things as well. So next is coming, and it's already happening now, AI agents. So agents are capabilities, AI capabilities that work essentially autonomously. They do stuff. So one of my friends is a AI power user, and in his company, they have now created 97 AI agents. So when people have an HR question, they ask the AI agent, and they don't have to bother the HR executives. And the agents are saving them literally hundreds of hours per week. So they, in 2 to 3 years, what we're going to see is networks of agents. So instead of individual agents, we're going to see agents that can work together, that can accomplish even more significant work. And then beyond that, in 3 to 4 years, agents will be able to be in the real world in a significant way, which of course, that means they're robots. And within maybe 5 years, we'll see agents which are genuinely creative. Right now, all AI can do is it can spit back to you what it has learned through its training process. But genuine creativity is coming. And then beyond that is what's referred to as AGI, or artificial general intelligence. The general means that it can think. It's like as smart as us. People who are in the field are constantly talking about this because it's like where they all want to go. And ChatGPT, the OpenAI, the makers of ChatGPT, recently said, well, yeah, we're targeting AGI. That's where we're headed. This is the way I think it looks right now. So as I said, if you have a PhD, you have to use AI. And in warehouses, like Amazon has 750,000 robots in its warehouses. So clearly the distribution industry is highly automated with AI. Next year, the knowledge workers pool who are using AI is going to expand, and the manual workers pool who are using AI is going to expand. And by 2030, the two are going to practically overlap. And the manual workers will become much more knowledgeable. They'll become much more like knowledge workers because they will have the knowledge and skill to actually make use of AI. So we're sort of getting this convergence from the bottom and the top of the economy towards the middle. And you can see where I think it's going. Essentially, AI is taking over the entire economy, which is what I think is happening. And beyond that, just for grins, I wanted to mention there's a phenomenon which is called the singularity, which is when computers are no longer as smart as humans, but smarter. And they get smarter really fast because they can learn so much faster than we can, because they can assimilate trillions of data points, as I mentioned in the MasterCard example. So there's a couple of books about this written by this guy, Ray Kurzweil. And he said the whole point of the singularity is that we don't know what's going to happen. Singularity is a term from physics, means we have no idea what happens. And they use it to describe what happens in a black hole. Since nobody's seen inside a black hole and come back, we don't know what that is. So physics uses that term to describe the undescribable. And Ray Kurzweil has used the term singularity to describe what happens when computers are so much smarter than us that we have no idea what happens. But a lot of people think it's going to happen by 2035, and it may or may not, but it may, in which case we need to be prepared. Oh, and then, by the way, there's quantum computing. So I showed you this image before. Quantum computing will accelerate AI's capacity because quantum computers can solve computing problems that conventional computers cannot solve. And all of the big tech companies have their own quantum computing initiatives. So Google has one, Microsoft has one, because the power of this is it's like going to turbocharge AI. So if you think AI is disruptive, put quantum computing with AI, and if you don't believe me, then just follow the money. So in 2025, for their annual budgets, those four companies alone have budgeted $125 billion for AI investment, of which $53 billion is going to NVIDIA for chips. The government, Trump recently announced a $500 billion initiative. The EU last week announced a $200 billion initiative. The Chinese government is spending unknown billions of dollars. So all this adds up to trillions of dollars. So all these people think that AI is the real deal. And, if they're all wrong, then everybody's going to lose a ton of money. But I wouldn't bet against them all because they all really think it's happening. The net result of all this is in 10 years, we're living in a completely different world. And this is why, again, I'm reaching out to all my clients going, do you guys realize what's going on here? So now I want to come back to the design profession, which is the last little bit of slides I want to share with you. So I showed you this before. How it pertains to design. Well, AI is changing how we create. As designers, it's changing how we create. And again, I can reference Devani's experience. It changes how she works because she can, I showed you the blue nightclub, but she can do the nightclub in 10 colors and show all 10 to the client. And they can say, oh, I like the blue one, I like the red one, right? And all that can happen in a matter of minutes. Once she gets the base design, she can change the color that fast. So that's not just a functional change, that's a profound change because it changes the iterative process of thinking about what you're designing. Today, we therefore ask questions of ChatGPT and we use it to visualize. We use Midjourney and others to visualize. So then I asked Gemini, what are the best tools for AI for interior design? And it showed me all that list, which here's the list. So it on its own, it broke it down into 4 categories. I didn't ask it to do that. So for generating ideas, for creating 3D renderings, for editing, and other tools. These are tools that already exist. You may not know it, but most of your students are probably using them, especially the ones that are free or cheap. Devon Peck is a writer. AI in design, the 15 best tools. And this is what he came up with. And then he went further and he said, well, so designers are going to use AI in 4 different ways. So he's starting to categorize it for us, which is really helpful. So first is text to image. So text, I enter a text, the system comes back with an image. And then image to image, which is imaging. So you give the AI an image and it does the image. That's how Devani did the rendering that I showed you of the building that was in a sort of a sketch format. She uses her tablet to input it into Midjourney, and then Midjourney elaborates on it. And then text to text, which is help me explain what I'm doing to my client, like what's my thinking behind this design, blah, blah, blah. And then text to video. So now you can write a text, a prompt, and have the computer generate a video. That's not ChatGPT, that's a different set of programs. And Devani showed me some of that too. So she has fly-throughs of some of her buildings, which were done by AI. It's just really helpful to have a categorization to begin to break it down, like what are the different things you can do and how do you do them and what does that look like? And this is all current time. I'm talking about stuff that can be done right now.
interior design, artificial intelligence, and its amazing uses. So, if you do a Google search, you'll find 100 of these in, 30 seconds. Here's the program Spacely AI, which is apparently the most highly recommended AI tool this week. Next week, it'll be some other tool. And so then I asked Devani, well, what tools are you using? And she gave me this list. I'm like, you got to be kidding. You know how to use all this software proficiently? And she said, yeah, I have to for her job, because what she does is she does computational fluid dynamics modeling for fire protection. She is trained as an architect. So she's using AutoCAD and ChatGPT and a BIM system and. And she can go back and forth between these like it's nothing. So she can create an image in Midjourney, take it into Photoshop and do something with it, and then go to Procreate and then add something in SketchUp and then get a narrative from ChatGPT, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the world. We're a long way from drafting boards. It's now how much software can you learn and how fast can you learn it? And of course, where we're already at is digital twins for buildings, for building information management. So digital models of buildings. Now I'm going to talk specifically about interior design with respect to the how I see it unfolding. So tomorrow, as I said, is Agentix. That little icon is an agent that we created in FutureLab. We use that guy as a symbol for our brainstorming tool. So what are Agentix going to do in interior design? Well, they're going to do space planning, blocking and stacking, lighting, materials, energy, glazing, fire protection, code compliance, furniture layouts and designs, and takeoffs. Kind of not that much left that agents won't be able to do for you and for your students. Some of these are already available, and some of them will be available soon. That Spacely AI that I showed you the home page of does a bunch of this stuff already. People are doing takeoffs using AI already. Devani mentioned to me that, as I said, she's doing fire engineering, and she works in Dubai and Saudi Arabia, where the building code is 2,500 pages long. And so they just asked ChatGPT, find me the paragraph in the building code on the size of the fire sprinkler pipe for this number of sprinkler heads. And they get it instantly, instead of having to page through hundreds and hundreds of pages. So here's an article from Archizer about how AI is changing architecture, which is not that different from how it's changing your field. So it's streamlining pre-design, reducing the time required to come up with design variations. And Devani is doing that too, as you saw. It's making BIM work much better. It's having a huge impact on urban planning because of its capacity to deal with complexity, optimizing infrastructure planning, and revolutionizing construction site management. Not quite, but I think that's coming really soon. For an SAP product called Ascendo, using AI to help manage field service. So this is kind of like construction. An AI plus a human on top of a 200-meter tall wind turbine, and they're obviously repairing it for Siemens or somebody. This is now available. It may be in sort of early beta stages of use, but it's available. So this is current time. So what's coming next? Well, Agents Networked is what I talked about. So they're going to do all this stuff, but they're going to do it in a network fashion, which means they can work much more autonomously. And oh, by the way, here it is. So I found this morning. I was looking for an example. So this is a software technology called Agent Layer, which has 3.5 million users. And what do? They create a network of agents that work together. And then next month, what's coming is agents in the field, which is what I call robots. And we have that now in a very disturbing way in Ukraine. So now drone swarms are working in the battlefield on both sides. And swarms of drones are essentially autonomous network of devices that are achieving objectives. We don't agree with these objectives, but they're incredibly destructive. The battlefield in Ukraine is unlike any battlefield that ever existed before because there is no place to hide. It's 100% transparent to both sides. Again, it says what's coming, which is the capacity of agents to work together in the field to achieve results. Where we think this is going, among other things, is what we call smart communities. So here's a model that we recently came up with about smart communities. Here's what happens when you combine AI plus blockchain plus quantum computing. You get the capability to have a citywide, a digitized cities. And then we're going to get
instead of a digital twin, we're going to get the urban twin, which is modeling the entire city in software, which has very interesting consequences for urban designers primarily, but also for architects and interior designers. And then I'm wondering if you've heard about NEOM. So the government of Saudi Arabia decided a few years ago that they wanted to build a new city in the climatically very hospitable part of the country, which is up north, where they actually have mountains where you can ski, and the mountains go right down into the Red Sea. So it's quite beautiful. And so they decided to build a new city there, and they call it NEOM. And it's now under construction. And I know that because a friend of mine works there. She says, yes, it's under construction. This is a visualization of what they want it to look like. This is another visualization. This is a recent photograph. There are 60,000 people building this city in the desert. Do you think that they're going to be using AI in this city? Possibly. Well, of course they are. This is a multi-trillion-dollar project by the government of Saudi Arabia to try to diversify its economy away from oil. And there are much more advanced phases of construction, which they don't share photographs about, but they're expecting to have some portions of it open soon. What they're building is a city which is 200 miles long. It's a lean city. It's called The Line. It's a fascinating concept in urban design, and that's what they want it to look like. So that's where it joins the Red Sea. Maybe someday it will actually look like that. We don't know. But the point is that they are thinking ahead about the future of their society, and AI is a big part of that. And then in a decade or less, we get fully autonomous systems, which is where the singularity and AGI comes in. Except in some sense, we have those now. These are photographs from an Amazon video about Amazon warehouses, where, as I mentioned, there are 750,000 robots working globally. There's a dancing robot. That's a robot that makes food in a restaurant in Boston, robots making cars, 1,000 robots dancing in China, robots playing musical instruments, and then we have robots that we're falling in love with. Sex bots are the general term for that, which are now becoming common. And there are now clinical cases of people falling in love with chatbots. So what does this mean for you? One of the things that it means is that the way the classroom and the homeworks are going to flip. Students will be able to get their lectures at home, and that means that the classroom will no longer be for lecturing. It will be for complex problem solving in teams in real time, so that they learn those skills, which are important. So the way you teach now is going to flip around, I think. Maybe it already has for you. I don't know. It's also going to change the grading process, because you will no longer be able to rely on any material, any work that the student turns in. You simply will have no idea if the student did it or if an AI did it, which means that exams and classrooms are now going to be, okay, you're going to make it live right here in front of me without your computer. That's the only way for a student to demonstrate that they have the knowledge that they're expected to have. And it's going to change your role as a teacher from lecturer to coach, because the lectures are going to be, videos on the web. There are now hundreds of how-to videos on the internet about how to use AI. So you don't have to cover that content. You can come up with a syllabus, the students can watch that, and then you're going to be coaching them so that they can develop their skill as a designer, because AI can create stuff for them, but it cannot help them become a better designer in the way that you as an expert designer will be able to. So those are three things that I think are going to happen. And as I said, I don't know. I haven't been in your classroom, so maybe you're already doing this. And maybe I'm not right and you won't have to do it quite this way. But I think you need to think about how this changes the way you teach, in the same way that you have to think about how it's going to change how you and your students practice when you're working professionally. This is a screenshot from the video. AI cannot replace architects, but architects who use AI can replace the other architects that don't. So that's the URL of my interview with Devani's 15 or 20 minutes. And if you can't copy down that ridiculous YouTube URL, if you go to my website on the news page, you can scroll down and you can find it. There are now 12 or 15 videos on the YouTube channel, and I'm adding more all the time. And they're all about AI. They're not all about design, but they're all about AI. I wanted to mention, in order to support the work that we're doing in Thailand, we're finishing up a couple books. These are currently in draft form. They'll be published probably in April. So I'm going through and making revisions. But we printed them up and we took them to Thailand. They took them to Thailand so that they could get some feedback on them. So the AI Nation is obviously written for the perspective of a national leader who needs to figure out what to do about this technology for their country. So last couple slides. So AI plus FIT. So what does it mean? The important thing is to realize that it's the question isn't if it will impact you, but how you're going to respond, because it is going to impact you.
And then I hope you found that presentation interesting. I had a great time talking with the students and faculty of FIT. And following my presentation, we had a very long and very interesting conversation. The students, of course, are very aware of AI, and the faculty is also using it. But the conversation revealed that the direction that it's likely to take, well, that's going to require some further thought. So we've scheduled a follow-up workshop for later in the spring to explore what it's likely to mean in the short, medium, and long term for both FIT, for its faculty, and for the students, and for their careers. Now, these insights about AI and interior design seem to apply to all the other design professions as well. In fact, they're very closely aligned with what I discussed with Devani Ashar about the future of architecture. Similarly, these impacts are going to be felt throughout all of the engineering professions as well. And indeed, AI is already having a huge impact on many forms of engineering. It's only a matter of time, it seems, before the entire scope of all design and engineering professions are fundamentally changed by the arrival of AI, by the productivity improvements that it offers, and by the capacity to tackle problems in a way that had not been available to us before. That is the promise of AI. But as we saw here, there are also many issues, challenges, and obstacles to be overcome along the way.